The day I received the violation notice from the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association, I was sitting on my back porch watching my golden retriever, Duke, sleep peacefully in his heated pet house. I had spent $300 on that thing, and it was the best investment I had made all winter. Duke was 12 years old, and his arthritis made the cold Nebraska nights unbearable for him. The heated pet house kept him comfortable when he wanted to be outside, and I thought I had found the perfect solution to his joint problems. Then Patricia Whitmore, the HOA president, decided it violated some obscure aesthetic guideline buried on page 47 of the Community Covenant. I read the letter 3 times, each reading making my blood pressure rise a little higher. Dear Mr. Vincent Foster, it has come to our attention that you have installed an unapproved structure on your property. The heated pet enclosure currently situated in your backyard violates Section 14.3.2 of the Pinewood Estates Community Standards, which states that all outdoor structures must receive written approval from the HOA board before installation. Furthermore, the structure's appearance does not meet the aesthetic requirements outlined in our architectural guidelines. You have 7 days to remove this structure or face daily fines of $50. I looked at Duke again. He was snoring softly, his gray muzzle twitching as he dreamed. The heated pet house was basically a well-insulated doghouse with a thermostat-controlled heating pad. It was beige, matching the color of my house perfectly. It sat against my back fence, barely visible from any angle except my own yard. I lived on a corner lot, and my backyard was completely fenced in with 6-foot privacy panels. The only way anyone could have seen it was if they had deliberately come into my yard or climbed on something to peer over the fence. I picked up my phone and called the HOA office. A chirpy voice answered after 2 rings. Pinewood Estates, HOA, this is Brenda speaking. Hi Brenda, this is Vincent Foster from 2847 Maple Drive. I just received a violation notice about my dog's heated house, and I need to speak with Patricia Whitmore. Oh, Mr. Foster, yes. Patricia mentioned your situation. She's not available right now, but I can have her call you back. When will she be available? This notice gives me 7 days, and I'd like to discuss this as soon as possible. She has a very busy schedule this week. There's a board meeting on Thursday evening at 7. You could attend that if you'd like to address the board directly. That was 3 days away. I agreed and hung up, already formulating my arguments. I had lived in Pinewood Estates for 5 years, and in that time, Patricia Whitmore had sent me exactly 0 violation notices. I kept my lawn immaculate, my house painted in approved colors, and my mailbox polished. I had always thought I was the model homeowner. Apparently, caring for my elderly dog crossed some invisible line. The next morning, I went to work at the accounting firm where I had been employed for the past 8 years. My office was in downtown Omaha, about 20 minutes from my house in the suburbs. I tried to focus on the quarterly reports I was preparing, but my mind kept drifting back to Duke and his heated house. During lunch, I did some research on Nebraska HOA laws. I discovered that while HOAs had significant power, they also had limitations. They could not ban reasonable accommodations for pets, especially when those accommodations addressed health concerns. Duke's arthritis was documented by our veterinarian, and the heated house was a medical necessity, not a luxury. Armed with this information, I called my vet's office and requested a letter detailing Duke's condition and the importance of keeping him warm. Dr. Sarah Martinez was happy to help. She had been treating Duke since I adopted him 4 years ago, and she knew his medical history intimately. Duke's arthritis is quite advanced for his age, she told me over the phone. The heated environment is definitely beneficial for managing his pain and mobility. I'll have that letter ready for you by tomorrow afternoon. Thursday evening arrived faster than I expected. I dressed in business casual attire, gathered my documents including the letter from Dr. Martinez, and drove to the community center where the HOA meetings were held. The building was a small brick structure near the entrance of our neighborhood, featuring a meeting room, a small gym, and a pool that opened during summer months. When I walked into the meeting room, about 15 other homeowners were already seated in folding chairs arranged in neat rows. At the front of the room, a long table sat elevated on a small platform. 5 people sat behind it, with Patricia Whitmore positioned in the center. She was exactly what you would picture when you thought of an overbearing HOA president. She was in her late 40s with short blonde hair styled in what I called the "I want to speak to the manager" cut. She wore a navy blue blazer over a white blouse, and her reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. To her right sat Gerald Thompson, the vice president, a balding man in his 60s who always seemed to agree with whatever Patricia said. To her left was Martha Reynolds, the secretary, a quiet woman in her 50s who took notes constantly. The other 2 board members were David Chen and Linda Rodriguez, both of whom seemed less enthusiastic about being there than the others. Patricia called the meeting to order at 7 sharp. She went through the usual agenda items: approval of last month's minutes, financial report, updates on landscaping contracts. I sat through 30 minutes of mundane neighborhood business before she finally reached new business and violations. "We have several violation notices to discuss," Patricia began, looking at her papers. "First, we have Mr. Vincent Foster regarding an unapproved structure." She looked up at me and I raised my hand. "Mr. Foster, would you like to address the board?" I stood and walked to the front of the room. "Yes, thank you. I received a notice about my dog's heated house. I'd like to explain why I installed it and why I believe it should be allowed under reasonable accommodation guidelines." Patricia's expression tightened. "Mr. Foster, the guidelines are quite clear. All structures require pre-approval. I understand that, but I'd like to present some information." I held up the letter from Dr. Martinez. "My dog, Duke, is 12 years old and suffers from severe arthritis. My veterinarian has written a letter stating that the heated environment is medically necessary for managing his condition. Under the Fair Housing Act and various state laws, reasonable accommodations must be made for disability-related needs, and that extends to service and companion animals." "Your dog is not a service animal, Mr. Foster," Patricia countered. "That's correct, but the principle of reasonable accommodation still applies. The heated house is a medical necessity, not a cosmetic addition. It's also completely enclosed within my privacy fenced backyard, matching my house's color scheme, and not visible from the street or neighboring properties. I'm curious how the violation was even discovered." A few murmurs rippled through the other homeowners. Patricia's face reddened slightly. "We conduct regular property inspections to ensure compliance with community standards." "By coming into my backyard?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "We have the right to inspect common areas and visible portions of all properties," Gerald interjected. "My backyard is neither common area nor visible from any public space," I replied. "It's completely fenced. Did someone enter my property without permission?" Patricia shuffled her papers. "The method of discovery is not relevant to the violation itself." "I think it's very relevant if someone was trespassing on my property," I said. Several heads nodded in agreement among the other homeowners. Linda Rodriguez leaned forward. "Patricia, how was this violation discovered?" Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. I was walking my dog past Mr. Foster's property, and I happened to notice the structure from a certain angle. What angle would that be? I pressed. My fence is 6 feet tall and solid. I don't appreciate being interrogated, Mr. Foster. The fact remains that you installed a structure without approval. The board will review your veterinary documentation and vote on whether to grant a variance. Until then, the violation stands, and fines will begin accruing after your 7-day grace period. When will the board vote? I asked. At our next meeting, which is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The grace period ends in 4 days. Are you saying I'll be fined for almost 3 weeks while waiting for a decision? That's how our process works, Patricia said dismissively. Next item on the agenda. Hold on, David Chen interrupted. Patricia, couldn't we schedule an emergency board meeting to address this sooner? It doesn't seem fair to fine Mr. Foster while we're still considering his request. The schedule is set, Patricia insisted. We can't rearrange everything for one homeowner's convenience. I returned to my seat, frustrated but not defeated. After the meeting ended, David Chen approached me in the parking lot. Vincent, right? He extended his hand and I shook it. Look, I think Patricia's being unreasonable about this. I'm going to push for an earlier meeting. Your veterinary letter seems pretty straightforward to me. I appreciate that, I said sincerely. I'm just trying to take care of my dog. I understand. I have 2 dogs myself. Keep me updated if anything changes. I drove home feeling slightly better about the situation. When I pulled into my driveway, Duke greeted me at the door, his tail wagging despite the stiffness in his legs. I knelt down and scratched behind his ears. We're going to fix this, buddy, I told him. The next morning, Friday, I woke to find another letter from the HOA in my mailbox. This one informed me that my grass was 1/4 inch above the maximum allowed height and needed to be mowed within 48 hours. I measured my lawn 3 times. It was well within the acceptable range. This was retaliation, pure and simple. I took photographs of my lawn with a ruler showing the grass height, then called Brenda at the HOA office again. I received another violation notice that appears to be inaccurate, I told her. My grass is well within guidelines. All violation notices are carefully reviewed before being sent, she replied in that same chirpy tone. By Patricia Whitmore. She's the president, so yes, she reviews all notices. And does she have any sort of grudge against me? I wouldn't know anything about that, Mr. Foster. I hung up and immediately called David Chen. He answered on the 3rd ring. David, it's Vincent Foster. I just received a bogus violation notice about my grass height. It's clearly retaliation for challenging the first notice. He sighed. That sounds like Patricia. She doesn't like being questioned. Look, I talked to Linda this morning and we're both willing to call for an emergency meeting. We need 3 of the 5 board members to agree. Let me see what I can do. The rest of Friday passed without incident. Saturday morning, I decided to document everything. I took detailed photographs of my property from every angle, showing the heated pet house, my lawn, my mailbox, my siding, my roof. If Patricia wanted to play games, I would be prepared. That evening, David called me with good news. We got the 3 votes. There'll be an emergency meeting Monday night at 7. Just you, the board, and your situation. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate this. No problem. Patricia wasn't happy about it, but she was outvoted. Monday arrived, and I prepared for the meeting like I was going to trial. I had my veterinary letter, photographs, printouts of relevant laws regarding reasonable accommodations, and documentation of my property's compliance with all other HOA guidelines. I even brought receipts showing that the heated pet house was a professionally manufactured product designed specifically for outdoor pet use, not some ramshackle structure I had cobbled together. The meeting room was empty except for the 5 board members when I arrived. Patricia's expression could have frozen water. She called the meeting to order without any pleasantries. "Mr. Foster, present your case," she said curtly. I spent 15 minutes laying out my arguments. I showed them Dr. Martinez's letter, explained Duke's condition, and cited the specific laws regarding reasonable accommodations. I showed them photos proving the structure was not visible from outside my property. I even brought up the questionable method by which the violation had been discovered. "How exactly did you see into my backyard, Patricia?" I asked directly. "Because I've looked from every possible public vantage point, and the heated pet house is not visible." Her face reddened. "I was invited into your backyard by a neighbor who shares your rear fence line." "Which neighbor?" I asked. "That's confidential." "So someone invited you onto their property to spy into mine, and you used that information to issue a violation notice." "It wasn't spying. It was ensuring community compliance." Linda Rodriguez spoke up. "Patricia, that does seem a bit invasive." "I think Mr. Foster has made a compelling case. His dog has a medical need, the structure is not visible from public areas, and it appears well maintained and appropriate. I move that we grant a variance allowing the heated pet house to remain." "I second that," David said immediately. Martha Reynolds looked uncomfortable. "I think we need to consider the precedent this sets. If we allow Mr. Foster to keep an unapproved structure, what's to stop others from doing the same?" "The medical documentation," David replied. "This isn't a cosmetic choice. It's a health necessity." "I vote against the variance," Patricia stated firmly. Gerald Thompson nodded. "I also vote against it." "I vote in favor," David said. "In favor," Linda echoed. All eyes turned to Martha. She looked at her notes, then at me, then at Patricia. "I vote in favor," she said quietly. Patricia's jaw clenched. "Fine. The variance is granted. But understand, Mr. Foster, that this heated house must remain in its current location and must be maintained in good condition at all times. Any deterioration or changes will result in immediate violation notices." "Understood," I said, relief washing over me. "Thank you all." I left the meeting feeling victorious. Duke could keep his heated house, and I had successfully stood up to Patricia Whitmore's overreach. I should have known she wouldn't let it go that easily. Tuesday morning, another violation notice arrived. This one claimed my mailbox was not properly maintained and showed signs of rust. I inspected my mailbox thoroughly. It was pristine. I had replaced it just 6 months earlier with a model specifically approved by the HOA. Wednesday brought a notice about my trash cans being visible from the street. They were in my garage, exactly where they were supposed to be. Thursday's notice claimed my house numbers were not the correct size. They were the exact size specified in the guidelines, and I had the receipt to prove it. I was being harassed, and it was escalating. I decided to fight fire with documentation. I took photographs of everything, dated and time-stamped. I wrote detailed responses to each violation notice, including evidence that they were baseless. I sent everything to all 5 board members, not just Patricia. By Friday, David Chen called me. "Vincent, this is getting out of hand. Patricia is abusing her authority. Linda and I are discussing filing a complaint with the board to have her removed as president." "What would that take?" I asked. "A majority vote of the board plus a petition from at least 20% of homeowners." "It's a long shot, but her behavior toward you is documented now, and I think other homeowners might support it. She's been heavy-handed with other people too." "Let me know how I can help," I said. That weekend, I decided to take Duke for a walk around the neighborhood. It was a cold Saturday afternoon in February, but the sun was out, and Duke enjoyed his walks even if they were slower these days. We were passing the community center when I saw Patricia standing in the parking lot with two other women, all of them about her age. She spotted me and walked over, her friends following. "Mr. Foster, I hope you're enjoying your little victory." "I'm just following the rules and taking care of my dog," I replied evenly. "You've made things very difficult for the HOA board. We have rules for a reason. And I followed your process. I presented my case and the board voted in my favor. That's how it's supposed to work." One of her friends, a woman with dark hair and too much makeup, chimed in. "People like you think the rules don't apply to them. This is a community, not your personal kingdom." "I never said the rules don't apply to me. I provided documentation showing that my situation warranted an exception." Patricia stepped closer. "I'm watching your property very carefully now, Mr. Foster. Any violation, no matter how small, will be reported and fined." "Then I guess I'll continue to maintain my property perfectly," I said. "Have a nice day." I walked away with Duke before the situation could escalate further. When I got home, I called David again and told him about the confrontation. "She actually said she's watching your property specifically?" he asked, sounding alarmed. Those were her exact words. "That's targeted harassment. I'm documenting all of this, Vincent. Keep reporting everything to me and Linda. We're building a case." The following week brought 3 more bogus violation notices. One claimed my front door was the wrong shade of approved color. One said I had weeds in my lawn, though I had treated for weeds just 2 weeks earlier and my grass was immaculate. The third claimed I was storing garbage bins visible from the street, which was completely false. I responded to each notice with photographs and documentation. I also started receiving responses from other homeowners who David and Linda had contacted. Apparently, Patricia had a history of targeting people who challenged her authority. A woman named Susan had questioned a fine 3 years ago and spent the next 6 months receiving weekly violation notices. A man named Robert had objected to a landscaping contract Patricia had approved, and suddenly, his house was cited for multiple violations he had to spend thousands of dollars to remedy, even though they were questionable at best. David and Linda collected all these testimonials and scheduled another board meeting for the following Thursday. This time, it was to discuss Patricia's conduct as president. The meeting room was packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood that Patricia might be removed, and people were interested. Some supported her strict enforcement of rules, claiming it kept property values high. Others were tired of her authoritarian approach and wanted a more reasonable board president. The meeting started with Patricia in her usual seat, clearly unhappy about the agenda. David Chen took the lead. "We're here tonight to discuss concerns about the HOA president's conduct, specifically allegations of targeted harassment against homeowners who have challenged board decisions. We've collected testimonials from multiple residents detailing patterns of behavior that suggest abuse of authority." Patricia interrupted. "This is absurd. I enforce the rules fairly and consistently." "Then explain why Mr. Foster has received 8 violation notices in 2 weeks, all of which have been documented as false or exaggerated," Linda Rodriguez asked. "I haven't personally sent those notices," Patricia claimed. "The management company sends them based on inspection reports." "Reports that you file," David countered. "We've subpoenaed the inspection reports from the management company and they all bear your signature." This was news to me. I didn't know they had gone that far. Patricia's face paled slightly. "I'm thorough in my inspections. If Mr. Foster's property has violations, they need to be addressed." A woman in the audience stood up. It was Susan, one of the homeowners David had mentioned. "Patricia, you did the same thing to me 3 years ago. After I questioned a fine, you sent me violation notices every week for 6 months. I eventually paid over $2,000 in fines and repairs for things that weren't actually violations. I kept quiet because I was afraid you'd make it worse." Robert stood as well. "She did it to me too." I questioned why the board approved an expensive landscaping contract with a company that Patricia's brother-in-law owned. Suddenly, my property had code violations I never knew existed. I spent $4,000 fixing things that didn't need fixing. More people stood, each sharing their own stories of Patricia's retaliation. The room buzzed with anger and frustration. People who had remained silent out of fear were finally speaking up. Patricia tried to regain control. "These are all coincidences. I enforce the rules as written in our covenants. You enforce them selectively," David said. "And you use your position to punish people who disagree with you. That's not leadership. That's tyranny." Gerald Thompson, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Patricia, I think you should consider stepping down." Everyone looked at Gerald in surprise. He had been Patricia's most loyal supporter. "Even I can see this has gone too far," Gerald continued. "The evidence is overwhelming. You've damaged the community's trust in this board." Patricia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I have dedicated years to this community. I've kept property values high and maintained our standards. If you want to remove me because I actually care about following the rules, then fine. But don't come crying to me when this neighborhood turns into a run-down disaster." "We're voting on your removal as president," Martha Reynolds said quietly. "All in favor." 4 hands went up: David, Linda, Martha, and Gerald. "You're removed as president, effective immediately," David announced. "Gerald, as vice president, you'll assume the presidency until we can hold elections." Patricia grabbed her papers and stormed out of the meeting room. The atmosphere immediately lightened. People started talking, some celebrating, others expressing relief that the tyranny was finally over. After the meeting, several homeowners approached me to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to Patricia. I hadn't set out to start a revolution. I just wanted to keep my dog warm. But sometimes one person refusing to back down can inspire others to find their own courage. I went home that night feeling like a weight had been lifted. Duke greeted me at the door, completely oblivious to the drama his heated house had caused. I gave him extra treats and let him sleep in his warm sanctuary outside, knowing it was finally secure. The weekend passed peacefully. No violation notices arrived. I actually relaxed for the first time in weeks. Monday morning, I went to work feeling optimistic about the future of my neighborhood. Then Tuesday happened. I came home from work to find Duke barking frantically in the backyard. This was unusual. Duke rarely barked. As I rushed through the house to the back door, I saw why. The heated pet house was gone. In its place was a note weighted down by a rock. "Rules are rules. You think you won. Think again." My blood ran cold. Someone had entered my property and stolen Duke's heated house. This wasn't HOA business anymore. This was theft and trespassing. I immediately called the police. Officer Michael Bradley arrived within 20 minutes. He was a middle-aged man with a kind face and a methodical approach. I showed him the note, explained the situation with the HOA, and provided photographs of the heated pet house. "You have any security cameras?" he asked. "No, I never thought I'd need them in this neighborhood." "Any suspects?" Patricia Whitmore, the former HOA president. She was removed from her position last week after harassing me and other homeowners. Officer Bradley took notes. "Do you have proof it was her?" "Not direct proof, but the timing is suspicious. And the note mentions rules, which seems to reference the HOA dispute. I'll file a report and have a conversation with Miss Whitmore. In the meantime, I recommend installing cameras. If this escalates, you'll want documentation. After the officer left, I called David Chen and explained what happened. He was appalled. "This is criminal activity, Vincent. Patricia's crossed a serious line. The police are looking into it, but I don't know if they'll be able to prove anything." "Did you keep the note?" "Yes, the officer took it as evidence." "Good. Let me know what happens." I spent the rest of the evening with Duke inside the house. The temperature was supposed to drop below zero that night, and without his heated house, Duke couldn't stay outside. I set up a bed for him in the living room, gave him his arthritis medication, and tried to make him comfortable. Around 11 o'clock, Duke started whining. His joints were bothering him, and he needed to go outside. I let him out into the backyard, and he did his business quickly before limping back inside. I could see the cold was affecting him badly. At midnight, Duke started barking. Not his usual alert bark when someone approached the house, but a continuous, distressed barking. He was uncomfortable, probably in pain, and he couldn't settle down. I tried everything: treats, toys, soothing words. Nothing worked. The barking continued through the night. Every time I thought he had finally settled, he would start again. I was exhausted, Duke was miserable, and I knew my neighbors were probably awake and furious. Wednesday morning arrived with me having slept maybe 2 hours total. Duke was finally quiet, curled up on his bed and sleeping fitfully. I called in sick to work, then called Dr. Martinez's office to see if I could get an emergency appointment. "Bring him in at 3, the receptionist told me. At 8 in the morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my next-door neighbor, Tom Harrison, looking tired and annoyed. "Vincent, I'm sorry about your HOA problems, and I like Duke, but the barking last night was unbearable. My kids couldn't sleep, and I have to be at work in an hour running on 4 hours of sleep." "I know, Tom, and I'm really sorry. Someone stole Duke's heated house and he's in pain from the cold. I'm taking him to the vet today." Tom's expression softened. "Someone stole it. That's messed up. Look, I'm sorry for coming over here angry. I hope the vet can help." "Thanks. I'll do everything I can to keep him quiet tonight." But I didn't know how I was going to manage that. Duke needed warmth for his arthritis, and without the heated house, keeping him comfortable inside seemed impossible. The barking would probably continue. By the time 3 o'clock arrived, I had received knock-on visits from 2 more neighbors complaining about the barking. I took Duke to the vet, and Dr. Martinez examined him thoroughly. "His arthritis has flared up significantly," she said. "The cold is really bothering him. I'm going to prescribe a stronger pain medication for short-term use, but he really needs to stay warm. His heated house was stolen. I'm trying to replace it, but it will take a few days to get a new one delivered. In the meantime, can you keep him inside with heating pads?" I tried, but he's restless and barking constantly. It's disturbing the neighbors. Dr. Martinez thought for a moment. "There's a 24-hour pet boarding facility in Omaha that has heated kennels. It's not ideal, but it might be a solution for a few nights until you can get a replacement heated house." It wasn't what I wanted, but it seemed like the only option. I took Duke home, packed his food and medications, and drove him to the boarding facility. He looked confused and sad as I left him there, and I felt terrible. On my way home, Officer Bradley called. "Mr. Foster, I spoke with Patricia Whitmore. She denies any involvement in the theft of your dog's house." "Did you show her the note?" I mentioned it. "She said anyone could have written that." "Did you search her property?" "The heated house has to be somewhere." I can't search her property without a warrant, and we don't have enough evidence for a warrant. It's your word against hers right now. So she gets away with theft and trespassing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we need more evidence. Install those cameras I mentioned. If she tries anything else, we'll have proof. I hung up, frustrated but understanding his position. As soon as I got home, I ordered a security camera system with 24-hour recording and motion detection. I also ordered a new heated pet house, this time with a GPS tracker hidden inside it just in case. Thursday morning brought another development. I received a call from a lawyer named Jennifer Morse. She explained that several homeowners, including David Chen and Linda Rodriguez, had contacted her about pursuing legal action against Patricia Whitmore for harassment, abuse of authority, and possibly theft. "We're building a civil case," Jennifer explained. "The criminal side is up to the police, but we can pursue damages for the harassment and emotional distress she caused." "I'm interested," I said. "What would I need to do?" "Provide documentation of all the violation notices, your responses, any communications with Patricia, and statements from witnesses. We're also filing a restraining order on your behalf to keep her away from your property." This was escalating beyond anything I had imagined, but I was committed now. Patricia had crossed too many lines, and she needed to be held accountable. Friday, the security cameras were installed. I had 8 cameras covering every angle of my property, all recording to a cloud server. If anyone came near my house, I would have footage. Saturday, the new heated pet house arrived. I set it up in the same location as before, activated the GPS tracker, and brought Duke home from the boarding facility. He immediately went to his warm sanctuary and settled in, finally comfortable again. Saturday night, at 11:43, my phone alerted me to motion in the backyard. I pulled up the camera feed and watched in real time as someone climbed over my fence. The infrared cameras captured everything. It was Patricia Whitmore, dressed in dark clothing, carrying what looked like a crowbar. I called 911 immediately. "Someone is breaking into my backyard right now. I have them on camera. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and lock your doors." I watched the camera feed as Patricia approached the heated pet house. She started prying at it with the crowbar, trying to dismantle it. Duke began barking inside it. Then red and blue lights flashed as 2 police cars arrived. I went to my front door as officers rushed into my backyard. I heard shouting, then Patricia's voice protesting. A few minutes later, Officer Bradley came to my front door. "We got her in the act. She's under arrest for trespassing and attempted theft. Can you send me that camera footage?" "Absolutely. I'll email it to you right now." I watched from my front window as Patricia was led to a police car in handcuffs. She was yelling something about community standards and property values, but her words were lost in the chaos. The next few weeks were a blur. Patricia was charged with criminal trespassing, attempted theft, and theft of the original heated pet house, which was found in her garage when the police executed a search warrant. The note matched her handwriting. She eventually pleaded guilty to avoid trial and was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 3 years of probation, and ordered to pay restitution for the stolen heated pet house plus damages for harassment. The civil case proceeded separately. Jennifer Morse represented 12 homeowners who had been targeted by Patricia over the years. The case revealed that Patricia had systematically harassed anyone who challenged her authority, costing homeowners tens of thousands of dollars in false fines and unnecessary repairs. The HOA's insurance company settled out of court for a substantial sum, and new leadership was elected. Gerald Thompson served as temporary president, but declined to run in the special election. David Chen was elected as the new president, with Linda Rodriguez as vice president. Their first act was to revise the community covenants to include better oversight of the board and clear procedures for challenging violations. The harassment I had endured became a cautionary tale in our neighborhood and beyond. Local news covered the story, and other HOAs in the area began reviewing their own practices to avoid similar situations. Some called me a hero for standing up to Patricia. I didn't feel like a hero. I just wanted my dog to be warm. Duke lived comfortably in his heated pet house for another 2 years before passing away peacefully in his sleep. He was 14 years old and had enjoyed a good quality of life right up until the end. I like to think the heated house added those extra comfortable years to his life. After Duke passed, I adopted another dog from a shelter, a 7-year-old mixed breed named Lucy who also had arthritis. She loved the heated pet house as much as Duke had. This time, there were no complaints from the HOA. David Chen made sure reasonable accommodation policies were clearly written into the updated covenants. I still live in Pinewood Estates. The neighborhood is more peaceful now, more reasonable. The new HOA board enforces rules fairly and listens to homeowners' concerns. Property values remained stable, proving that strict authoritarian enforcement was never necessary. Sometimes, I think about that first violation notice and how a simple heated pet house for my elderly dog spiraled into criminal charges, a civil lawsuit, and the removal of a tyrannical HOA president. It's strange how standing up for something small can lead to significant change. Tom Harrison, my neighbor who had complained about Duke's barking that difficult night, became a good friend. He helped me install Lucy's heated house and often brings his kids over to play with her. The neighborhood kids love Lucy, and she loves them right back. The heated pet house still sits against my back fence, providing warmth and comfort. It's become something of a neighborhood landmark, a reminder that sometimes doing the right thing for those who depend on us is worth fighting for, even when the fight gets ugly. I learned several important lessons from this experience. First, documentation is everything. Taking photos, keeping records, and saving emails made all the difference when the situation escalated. Second, you're usually not alone. When I stood up to Patricia, other people found the courage to share their own stories, and together we created change. Third, some people will abuse any amount of power they're given, and communities need checks and balances to prevent that abuse. The legal system worked slowly but ultimately delivered justice. Patricia's guilty plea meant she had a criminal record, and her probation terms included staying away from all HOA activities. She moved out of Pinewood Estates 6 months after her conviction, and I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she relocated to Arizona. I hope she learned something from the experience, though I have my doubts. The restitution money Patricia paid allowed me to upgrade to an even better heated pet house for Lucy, with better insulation and a more advanced heating system. I also donated some money to Dr. Martinez's clinic to help other pet owners who couldn't afford treatment for their elderly animals. Jennifer Morse, the attorney who handled the civil case, used our successful lawsuit as a template for helping other homeowners dealing with HOA abuse. She's now known in the Omaha area as the go-to lawyer for HOA disputes, and she's won several more cases against overzealous boards. Looking back, I'm grateful for how things turned out, despite the stress and difficulty of those weeks. Duke got to live comfortably in his final years. A corrupt HOA president was held accountable. A community learned to govern itself more fairly, and I learned that standing up for what's right, even in the face of intimidation and harassment, is always worth it. Lucy is currently asleep in her heated pet house as I write this. The temperature outside is 15 degrees, but she's warm and comfortable. She doesn't know the history of her cozy shelter, doesn't understand the fight it took to keep it. She just knows she's safe and warm, and that's exactly how it should be. The Pinewood Estates community has thrived under new leadership. David Chen organized neighborhood events that brought people together: summer barbecues, Halloween parties for kids, a community garden. The authoritarian atmosphere that Patricia created has been replaced by a sense of actual community. People talk to each other now, help each other, instead of living in fear of violation notices. There's even a reasonable accommodation section in the updated covenants that specifically mentions heated pet houses for animals with medical needs. It's informally known as Duke's Law among the homeowners, though that's not its official title. Several other elderly dogs in the neighborhood now have similar setups, and their owners thank me regularly for paving the way. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had simply removed Duke's heated pet house when I received that first violation notice. Would Duke have suffered through cold nights in pain? Would Patricia have continued her reign of HOA terror unchecked? Would other homeowners have found the courage to speak up without my example? These questions don't have clear answers, but I'm glad I didn't find out. The fight was worth it. Even the sleepless night when Duke barked for hours, even the stress of dealing with false violations, even the fear when Patricia was caught on camera breaking into my yard. All of it led to positive change. The story also taught me about the importance of local governance and community involvement. HOAs exist in a strange legal space. They're private organizations with governmental-like powers over people's homes and property. When good people run them with fairness and transparency, they can genuinely improve communities. When people like Patricia get control, they become oppressive and harmful. I'm more involved in the HOA now than I ever was before. I attend meetings regularly, I volunteer for community events, and I stay informed about board decisions. I encourage other homeowners to do the same. Accountability requires participation, and I learned that lesson the hard way. My accounting career continued without much interruption, though several coworkers followed the news coverage with interest. My boss joked that I should have gone to law school instead of becoming an accountant, given how well I handled the legal battle. I reminded him that I had lawyers doing the heavy lifting. I just provided documentation and told the truth. The truth was powerful enough on its own. Patricia's pattern of harassment was so well documented, so clearly retaliatory, that defending her became impossible. When people try to hide their abuse of power, documentation shines a light they can't escape. This whole experience also strengthened my faith in the legal system, despite its flaws and slowness. The police investigated thoroughly once they had evidence. The courts processed the criminal case fairly. The civil lawsuit held the responsible parties accountable. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't easy, but justice was eventually served. I still get occasional messages from people in other neighborhoods dealing with similar HOA problems. They find my story online and reach out for advice. I always tell them the same things. Document everything, find allies, know your legal rights, and don't back down if you're in the right. Sometimes the fight is worth having. Lucy just woke up from her nap and is looking at me expectantly. It's time for her evening walk. The sun is setting over Pinewood Estates, casting long shadows across the well-maintained lawns and approved color houses. The neighborhood looks peaceful and orderly, just like Patricia always wanted. The difference now is that the order comes from reasonable people applying fair rules, not from fear of an authoritarian board president. As I clip Lucy's leash and head out the door, I pass the spot where Patricia's police car was parked that night she was arrested. I remember watching through my window, feeling both vindicated and sad. Sad that it had to come to that someone could become so obsessed with control that they'd commit crimes to maintain it. But mostly, I feel grateful. Grateful for Duke, who just wanted a warm place to sleep. Grateful for Dr. Martinez, who provided the medical documentation I needed. Grateful for David Chen and Linda Rodriguez, who stood up with me when it would have been easier to stay quiet. Grateful for the legal system that, despite its imperfections, ultimately worked. And grateful for this community, which learned to govern itself better through this difficult experience. The heated pet house sits in my backyard, doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping an elderly dog comfortable on cold Nebraska nights. It's such a simple thing, really. But simple things can spark important battles, and important battles can lead to meaningful change. As Lucy and I walk past the community center where those HOA meetings took place, I notice David Chen pulling into the parking lot. He waves, and I wave back. There's a board meeting tonight, but it's not the kind I need to attend in self-defense. It's just routine business reviewing the budget, discussing summer pool maintenance, approving a variance for someone's fence repair. Normal, boring HOA business. Exactly as it should be. We finish our walk, and Lucy settles into her heated pet house for the evening. I sit on my back porch with a cup of coffee, watching her sleep peacefully. The temperature is dropping, but she's warm. My property is maintained to HOA standards, but not out of fear, out of simple pride in my home. My neighbors are friends, not adversaries. This is what Duke's fight achieved. Not just a heated pet house for one dog, but a better community for everyone. Sometimes the smallest acts of resistance against unfair authority can ripple outward in unexpected ways, touching lives and changing systems. Tomorrow I'll go to work, come home, take Lucy for another walk and live my quiet life in Pinewood Estates. There will be no violation notices waiting in my mailbox, no harassment from the HOA, no drama or conflict. Just normal suburban life in Nebraska, exactly as it should be. And when winter fully settles in, when the temperatures plunge and the snow piles high, Lucy will have her warm sanctuary waiting. That heated pet house, the one that started everything, will keep doing its job. No HOA president, no matter how tyrannical, can take that away now. The covenants protect it, the community supports it, and the law upholds it. Duke's legacy lives on, not just in the warmth that comforts Lucy, but in the fairer, more reasonable community that emerged from standing up for what was right. That's worth more than any amount of money or any number of victories in court. That's real, lasting change. I finish my coffee and head inside for the night. Lucy is already snoring softly in her heated house. The security cameras watch over everything, though I doubt I'll ever need them again for anything more than checking on deliveries. The neighborhood is quiet except for the distant sound of someone's wind chimes and the occasional car passing by. This is home. This is peace. This is what fighting for what matters can achieve. And as I turn off the lights and settle in for the night, I feel grateful for every difficult moment that led to this quiet evening. Because sometimes the hardest fights lead to the most worthwhile victories, and sometimes those victories look like nothing more than an elderly dog sleeping comfortably on a cold winter night. That's enough. That's everything. And that's exactly why it was all worth it.